To hear this audiobook in full, please visit the links in the description below. Thank you for your support. A History of Taiwan, From Prehistory to the Present, by Zhang Haipeng and Tao Wenzhao. Chapter 2. The Prefecture of Taiwan in the Early and Mid-Qing Dynasty. Section 1. Emperor Kangxi unifies Taiwan. Fujian Navy. Admiral Shilong personally led a force across the sea in July 1683 in an attack on Taiwan, a new departure from the perspective of both Chinese maritime history and the history of the Qing dynasty. Prior to this, there had been the example of Zheng Chenggong, who led his troops across the sea eastward, but the battles fought by Cheng's navy with Dutch warships were minor in scale. This time, Shilong led his troops in a decisive battle with the navy of Zheng's Ming regime at Penghu. It is estimated that the two sides had mobilized a total of more than 500 warships powered by sails, which would make this the largest naval battle in Chinese history. Shilong was born in Nanshun Township in Jinjiang County, Fujian, in 1621, and his father, Shidaxuan, enjoyed a good reputation in the neighborhood. At the time when Zheng Zhilong of the southern Ming was based in coastal Fujian, Shilong had placed himself under his command. In 1647, Zheng Zhilong surrendered to the Qing, and Shilong shifted his support to Zheng Chenggong and became one of his most competent generals. According to historical accounts, when Shilong followed Zheng Chenggong, he was the youngest of all his generals, but he was skilled in the arts of war, initiating such tactics as movable wooden watchtowers, banners, and battle arrays. This suggests that Shilong's ability surpassed even Zheng Chenggong's. In the previous chapter, we saw how Koxinga annexed Zheng Kai in Xiamen, an action which was accomplished through the assistance of Shilong. Additionally, Shilong made a major contribution toward the defense of Xiamen. In March 1652, the Qing forces took advantage of Zheng Chenggong's personal attack on Huilai and Jieyang in Guangdong province to launch a surprise attack on Xiamen, and captured large amounts of gold, silver, and jewelry accumulated since the days of Zheng Zhilong. The general in command of the defense of Xiamen was Koxinga's uncle Zheng Jipeng, some say Zheng Jiwan. But he fled, without putting up any resistance, and Zheng Chenggong's wife was almost taken prisoner of war. Zheng Chenggong had earlier sent Shilong and Zheng Hongkui from Nan'ao, Guangdong, back to defend Xiamen. They were making their preparations to help Zheng Jipeng defend the city when their fleet encountered the Qing troops at Xiamen, sweeping away with their plunder. Seeing this, Shilong led his men in an attack on the enemy and won the highest praise for his action. Shilong's talents earned him the justifiable title of Zheng Chenggong's right-hand man. But it seems that Zheng Chenggong began to resent his general's success. The following year, a profound hatred began to develop between the two as a result of a minor incident. Zheng Dai, a soldier under the command of Shilong, had violated a military regulation. He took refuge with Zheng Chenggong, who promoted him to the position of an intimate valet. Shilong, after learning of the affair, went on to arrest and prosecute Zheng. When Zheng Chenggong heard the news, he called for a pardon, but Shilong defied his instructions and executed Zheng. Zheng Chenggong had Shilong arrested in response. Fearing Zheng's malice, Shilong fled from the Zheng camp, making his way secretly to Anping Port in Quanzhou. Zheng Chenggong retaliated by taking his revenge on Shilong's father Shidaxuan and his brother Shixian, having them both arrested and executed. He continued to pursue Shilong, who in desperation gave himself up to the Qing court, hoping for an opportunity to avenge his father. In dealing with the relationship between Shilong and Zheng Chenggong, historians often describe Shilong as a man whose arrogance finally brought him into conflict with Zheng. According to Professor Shi Weiqing of Xiamen University, in addition to his personal conceit, Shilong often questioned Zheng's anti-Qing strategies. In particular, when Zheng wanted to march south to Guangdong to save the Ming throne, planning to fight the Qing in alliance with Li Dingguo's army. Shilang did not support plan and publicly opposed the action, but in the person of Shilang, the Qing had acquired a campaigner who would prove fatal to Zheng's camp. When he heard about Shilang's new allegiance, Zheng expressed his regret, saying, "I will never again be able to eat in peace." Sure enough, Shilang was always victorious in battle with Zheng's army. He ultimately rose to the rank of naval admiral in Fujian, as the Qing general best acquainted with ocean combat. Shilang set sail for Taiwan for the first time in December 1665. He chose to start from Kinmen, but the initial attack did not go well. Shilang reported to Emperor Kangxi that his plans had been foiled by stormy weather. In April 1666, Shilang led a second expedition against Taiwan, and this time Kangxi granted him the official seal of the Jinghai general to provide him with extra motivation. Once again, the starting point was Kinmen. According to Shilang's report, his fleet set sail at the end of April, but returned to Kinmen 3 times due to heavy sea storms. In mid-May that same year, the fleet finally reached the Penghu Islands. But there they were struck by even greater storms, and the situation became critical. The fleet was finally dispersed by gales. Some took refuge in Tongshan and Xuanzhong, others in Luao in Zhangzhou, Fujian province. Shilang's ship was blown all the way to Nanao in Chaozhou, Guangdong province, and he did not make it back to Xiamen until early June. Shilang's failure in the second attack led to the Qing court changing its Taiwan strategy. In 1667, in the capacity of Fujian admiral, Shilang submitted a memorial to Emperor Kangxi in the hope of leading another expedition to Taiwan. But Kangxi's focus had shifted to the 3 vassals, and he no longer planned to use military force against Taiwan. The next year, Kangxi summoned Shilang to the capital and appointed him Grand Minister Assistant Commander of the Imperial Guards, incorporated into the Xianghuang, yellow-bordered banner, of the 8 Han banners. He abolished the post of Fujian admiral and burnt all the Navy warships in Fujian to show that he intended no further eastern expeditions. In 1674, the vassal rebellion broke out, and Zheng's army, led by Zheng Jing, invaded Fujian. In the course of the Qing forces' successful suppression of Geng Jingzhong, the king of Jingnan, and resistance to the invasion of Zheng Jing, Yao Qisheng from Wenchu Circuit of Zhejiang Province, a member of the Xianghong, red-bordered banner of the 8 Han banders, did outstanding job, for which he was promoted to the post of Fujian Provincial Administration Commissioner in May 1678, and it was his belief that a naval battle was essential to destroy Zheng's navy. The general most experienced in naval warfare was none other than Shilang, so for the first time, Yao recommended Shilang for the post. In June of the same year, Yao was appointed Fujian governor, responsible for coordinating military and civil affairs in Fujian province, and he was given additional powers. In October, Yao Qisheng recommended to the court the reinstatement of the post of Fujian Navy Admiral, and the response he received was positive. 2 months later, Emperor Kangxi ordered the abolition of the post of Fujian Navy and Army Admiral in favor of 2 separate posts of Fujian Army Admiral and Fujian Navy Admiral. However, the new Navy Admiral was not Shilang, because Yao had become aware that Shilang's nephews served as officers in the forces of Zheng Jing. He therefore had misgivings about recommending Shilang for the post. In 1680, Shilang's adopted son Xu Qi and his nephew Shi Hai were killed in Xiamen for their part in conspiring to capture Zheng Jing. This was confirmed by Yao Qisheng after a detailed investigation into the matter. He again vigorously recommended Shilang for the post of Fujian Navy Admiral. Li Guangdi, an academician of the Grand Secretariat, was also instrumental in the process. Li Guangdi was from Anxi in Quanzhou, Fujian. In 1670, he had passed the imperial examination and served as a compiler at the Imperial Academy. In 1673, Li Guangdi returned to his hometown and was trapped there the following year by the vassal rebellion. Zheng Jing occupied Quanzhou and searched for Li Guangdi in the hope of enticing him to switch allegiances. But not only did Li Guangdi refuse to surrender, he also provided the emperor with accurate information on the front line, for which he was rewarded. Li Guangdi was promoted to the post of academician of the Grand Secretariat in 1680, and he added his weight to the recommendation of Shilong's reinstatement for the purposes of conquering Taiwan. After the death of Zheng Jing in Taiwan in March 1681, Fujian Governor Yao Qisheng and Grand Secretariat academician Li Guangdi both submitted memorials suggesting an attack on Taiwan. But this time, they encountered resistance from Fujian Navy Admiral Wan Zhengse, who resolutely opposed the move. Wan was from Jinjiang County in Quanzhou, also a Fujian local, and he had defeated Zheng's army in more than one battles during the vassal rebellion. His capability in naval warfare seemed on a par with that of Shilong. It seemed that it was he himself alone who had been responsible for the capture of Kinmen, Xiamen, Haitan, Nanri, and Meizhou Island, driving Zheng Jing back to Taiwan. However, this man had been holding out against a campaign to conquer Taiwan since 1680. It is not known whether this was from fear of losing his position of military power after Shilong's comeback, or whether during his battles with Zheng's navy, he had formed the view that the Qing navy was not capable of sustaining a campaign on the open seas. Emperor Kangxi took the decision to modify Wan's responsibilities. His edict of September 1681 appointed Shilong as Fujian Navy Admiral, and Wan was transferred to the post of Fujian Army Commander. Thus, Kangxi's plan to conquer Taiwan was in place. In November 1681, Shilong assumed office in Xiamen. That same month, Fujian Governor Yao Qisheng reported to Emperor Kangxi on the strategy he had worked out recently for the campaign against Taiwan. He believed that the attack should depart not only from Kinmen, but also from Fuzhou. The reason for this, he argued, was that Fuzhou was only about 4 periods, a period was about 2 hours, by sea from Shangdanshui in northern Taiwan, now Danshui District, Taipei County. So part of the army should take advantage of the north wind and make a direct attack on the island of Taiwan, making contact with the local ethnic minority residents when they landed. They would then take advantage of Taiwan's dry river season in winter, taking Dongning by surprise with an overland march to the south. Yao Qisheng wanted a pincer movement, attacking on 2 flanks from the south and the north. A successful landing on Shangdanshui would pin down Zheng's naval support in the rear and improve the odds that the main Qing forces would be successful in their offensive against Penghu. But Shilong thought differently. On April 7, 1682, he secretly submitted his own plan of attack on Taiwan. The Fujian military situation he reported to Emperor Kangxi showed 5 major characteristics. First, there were many spies of Zheng's Ming regime active in Fujian. It was necessary to sow discord among them so that they would mistrust each other. Second, a feinting strategy was required, deliberately circulating false rumors that the Qing forces would attack from the north by making use of the northerly wind. Third, Zheng's navy had fortified their bases in Penghu and were possibly stationed at the 2 ports on the southern tip of Shiyu, Neijan and Waijan, now Neian and Wai'an, Siyu Township, Penghu County, as well as the largest port in Penghu, Niangma Palace, now Magong. Fourth, this time, Shilong would send his troops neither from Kinmen nor from Fuzhou, as advocated by Yao Qisheng, but from Tongshan in Zhaoan County in Zhangzhou, now Dongshan Island. Tongshan lies at a slightly more southerly latitude than Penghu. but still to the north of the administrative center of the Ming, Dongning, today's Tainan City. Shi Lang wanted to take advantage of the southerly wind for a surprise attack directly on Penghu, while Zheng's forces there were unprepared. And fifth, all of the current Fujian Navy admirals were good choices. For example, Wu Ying, the Tongan regional commander, Lin Cheng, the Xinhua regional commander, Chen Long, the Kinmen regional commander, Zhu Tiangui, the Pingyang regional commander, and Lin Xian, the Haitan regional commander. On this third occasion, that Shi Lang planned to attack Taiwan, he was apparently more confident than on his two previous attempts. Although Shi Lang was determined to win and planned to send his troops in June of the same year, many people challenged him on the elaboration of his plan. On April 13, 1682, Lahada, the Ninghai general guarding Fuzhou, invited Shi Lang, Yao Qisheng, and others to Quanzhou to discuss the plans for the campaign. During the discussions, Lahada asked Shi Lang to produce his draft memorial. Once made public, it immediately aroused Yao's opposition, because Shi Lang had pointed out in the document, for all his talents, Yao Qisheng was a northerner and lacked expertise in naval warfare. Yao, who rightly considered that it was only as a result of his efforts that Shi Lang had been given the opportunity to make his comeback, was resentful that Shi Lang had gone behind his back to the emperor. However, in early May 1682, Shi Lang completed drilling his forces in Xiamen and invited Lahada to conduct a review. Subsequently, on June 10th, Shi Lang and Yao Qisheng jointly led the navy south to Tongshan, ready to launch their offensive against Penghu before the summer gales. But on June 26th, Yao Qisheng sent a secret memo to Kangxi, strongly emphasizing the importance of dispatching troops from the north. He pointed out that many bays in Taiwan and Penghu were suitable for mooring in a north wind. If the direct offensive against Penghu was unsuccessful, it would still be possible to moor detachments in these bays. On a southerly wind, the only mooring point would be Nyangma Palace, and if the offensive against Penghu was unsuccessful, it would leave the entire fleet without mooring ports. In July, in order to test the Zheng A.S. defenses, Shi Lang sent regional commander Dong Yi with his whole force in an advance attack. A total of 32 warships attacked Penghu, but were repulsed by the defenders. Yao was concerned that he did not have sufficient influence to change Shi Lang's plan on his own. So he sent a joint memo to the emperor, along with Ninghai General Lahada and Fujian Army Commander Wan Zhengse, repeating the claim that the southerly wind was not as advantageous as the northerly wind. This temporarily delayed Shi Lang's plan to take advantage of the southerly wind to attack in the summer. On August 15th, learning of the blocking maneuver by the aforementioned officials, Shi Lang sent his own memo in defense of his plan. The dispute over the merits of the southerly and the northerly wind was becoming increasingly heated in the Fujian front line. In fact, although Yao Qisheng had agreed to send troops into Taiwan, he still believed that it would be better if the forces of the Zheng's Ming regime could be pacified by negotiation. So from October 1682 until February of the following year, the Qing officials in Fujian engaged in discussions with the Zhengs. Clearly, Yao Qisheng played an important role in all of the interactions with Taiwan over this period. But Shi Lang continued to train his forces, whose numbers, including naval officers and men gathered on Dongshan Island, now totaled more than 21,000 troops and 238 warships. As the troops were not due toward an immediate attack of Taiwan, too many forces gathered on Dongshan Island would weaken normal flood defense operations. Therefore, Shi Lang still led his warships on drilling maneuvers off the shores of Xiamen and Quanzhou. He handed over Coast Guard affairs to Fujian Army Commander Wan and asked him to allocate troops to help defend Kinmen, Xiamen, and Tongshan. Shillong was baffled by Yao Qisheng's continuing ambiguity over the decision to attack or to pacify. But between February and May 1683, many officers and supporters of Zheng's Ming regime did secretly defect to the Qing side. They provided much useful information to the Qing military on the prevailing conditions in Taiwan and Penghu. For example, the skyrocketing price of rice, now 5 or 6 silver taels per pikul. There was also information on resistance against the Zheng regime on the part of the indigenous minorities, provoking growing unrest on Taiwan. The information provided by these defectors proved to be true. Since the death of Zheng Jing, the ruling clique had become riddled with disorder and intrigue. From 1674, when Zheng Jing led his troops to participate in the vassal rebellion, the major part of the ruling power on Taiwan had been passed to his eldest son, Zheng Kazang. Zheng Kazang was also the son-in-law of administrative advisor Chen Yonghua. He was a firm and decisive, and with Chen as his assistant, the government should be said to honest and enlightened. Wrongdoers, even high officials and members of the royal family, were punished in accordance with the law when they transgressed. This situation caused resentment among other powerful ministers, of whom the most ambitious was the imperial guard, Feng Shifan. The 12-year-old Zheng Keshuang, Zheng Jing's second son, was Feng Shifan's son-in-law. Feng thought that Zheng Kazang, being only an adopted son of Zheng Jing, should not be eligible to inherit supreme power. He managed to win the support of great consort Dong, the wife of Zheng Chenggong, and she called Zheng Kazang to meet her for a discussion of official business, then announced that he was to be replaced by Zheng Keshuang. She was unaware that Feng in fact intended to assassinate Zheng Kazang, and his plan was successful. Thus, Zheng Jing was succeeded by Zheng Keshuang, and Feng Shifan became the power behind the throne in both internal and external affairs. Aware of how she had been used, great consort Dong died in depression in July. All this made the situation hopeless for the Zheng regime of Ming. The foundation for the Zheng regime of Ming was crumbling, and there was General Liu Guoxuan, who supported the overall situation alone. Liu Guoxuan was from Wuping County of Tingzhou Prefecture in Fujian. The original Qing gatekeeping soldier in Zhangzhou was commissioned with the task to guard the rear after he surrendered himself to Zheng Chenggong. But his talent was only revealed in the chaos caused by the vassal rebellion. At that time, he repeatedly defeated the troops under King of Jingnan, Geng Jingzhong, King of Pingnan Shang Zhichen, and Duan Yingju, the Fujian Navy and Army Admiral, deeds that made him known in southern Fujian. However, in Feng Shifan's conspiracy to seize power, Liu Guoxuan had already known it, but he pleaded illness, only to be ridiculed as birds of a feather. In 1683, Liu Guoxuan led 200,000 soldiers in more than 200 warships guarding Penghu. In June the same year, the Qing court and the Zheng regime held their 9th and last round of negotiation in Fuzhou, without any agreement. Since Yao Qisheng's objective of a peaceful resolution failed to bear any fruit, Emperor Kangxi decided to support Shillong's strategy of attack on Taiwan by taking advantage of the southerly wind. On July 8, 1683, at 0800 hours, Shillong led 20,000 men in 300 warships in a mighty fleet sailing towards Penghu. To enforce military discipline, Shillong required each commander to have his name written on the sail of his ship in order to follow clearly their conduct in action for future reward or punishment. At 1600 hours the following day, the fleet arrived at Maoyu and Huayu, 2 islands lying to the southwest of the Penghu archipelago. They were sighted by a dozen Navy warships of the Zheng regime of Ming, but there was no immediate engagement, and the ships of the Zheng regime returned directly to Penghu Island. Shillong commanded his fleet to take drop anchor in Shui and Bay to the north of Bazhao Island, now Wangan Township of Penghu County, just south of the Penghu Islands. On the morning of July 10th, Shi Lang ordered his right camp fleet commander Lan Li and other officers to lead 7 large warships northward into Penghu Bay. The navy of the Zheng regime, commanded by Liu Guoxuan, awaited them in battle array. On the island around Penghu Bay, Liu Guoxuan had hastily built artillery bastions to provide cover. According to Shi Lang's account, the army of the Zheng regime had built low walls dotted with bastions for cannons, tightly circling the bay to a distance of more than 20 li. Lan Li and others gained rapid success, and in the first battle, they sank more than 10 Navy warships of the Zheng regime. However, the tide changed, becoming unhelpful to the Qing Navy's northward attack. Shi Lang, fearing a reverse in fortunes, hastened to withdraw before nightfall, commanding his ships to take a temporary anchor in the ocean close to Shiyu. In the initial combat, the Zheng Navy casualties, killed and drowned in battle, totaled as many as more than 2,000. Shi Lang had been injured in the right eye by the explosion of cannon shell, but fortunately was at no risk of blindness. On the morning of July 11th, he commanded the fleet back to its original berth on Shuian Bay. On July 12th, the Qing Navy sailed northward from Bazhao in an aggressive advance, occupying Hujingyu and Tongpanyu Islands to the north. The next day, Shi Lang went on reconnaissance in a small boat to Naijian, Waijian, Dongshi, and Shishi, looking for ways to break down the enemy's defenses. The decisive battle was launched on the morning of July the 16th. Shi Lang ordered Provincial Commander Chen Mong and others to lead a contingent of 50 ships in a direct attack on Zhilongyu and Sijiaoshan as a deceptive deployment to the east. He ordered Regional Vice Commander Dong Yi and others to lead a contingent of 50 ships in a direct attack on Niuxin Bay as a deceptive deployment to the west. The vanguard of the attack comprised 56 large warships, divided into 8 squadrons of 7 ships. Commanded by 8 generals, including Shi Lang, they made a direct onslaught on Niangma Palace. Behind these 56 large ships was a reserve of more than 80 ships. In the tactics of several rounds of boat wave, Shi Lang's tactic was to throw his fleet at Liu Guoxuan's navy in several waves, trying to wipe out all warships of the Zheng regime by using several of his ships to attack one navy vessel of the Zheng regime. Liu Guoxuan had not expected such an aggressive assault from the Qing Navy, and the defensive array of the Zheng troops was quickly thrown into chaos. By dusk, Liu Guoxuan had realized that his situation turned hopeless. His fleet had been reduced to only about 30 vessels, which first sailed north to the Human Gate between Shiyu and Baisha Island, and then fled southeast to Taiwan. Shi Lang had won a complete victory. His memorial reported that more than 12,000 Navy soldiers of the Zheng regime had been killed or drowned, while more than 4,800 officers and men had surrendered. On July 17th, Liu Guoxuan fled back to Dongning. Shi Lang dispatched some of Liu's former subordinates to Taiwan to call on him to surrender, and made a secret promise to Liu that he would recommend him for a post as a regional commander if they could come to a successful agreement. In defiance of all opposition, Liu Guoxuan decided to surrender. Zheng Keshuang agreed, telling Secretariat drafter Zheng Dexiao to draft an instrument of surrender that was sent to Shi Lang at Penghu. On September 9th, Shi Lang dispatched his envoys to Taiwan to oversee the hair-shaving ceremony. On September 17th, Zheng Keshuang first gave up the seal of King of Yanping. On October 1st, Shi Lang started from Penghu to accept Zheng's personal surrender in Taiwan. 2 days later, he arrived at Luermen, and Zheng Keshuang brought the seal of Pacification General, accompanied by the other officials of the Zheng regime of Ming and remaining member of the Zheng clan. Shi Lang handled matters concerning the surrender in Taiwan and reported to the court on any problems following it. Emperor Kangxi finally decided to grant to Zheng Keshuang the title of Duke of Anhan, and granted to Liu Guoxuan the post of regional commander of Tianjin town. By 1683, Shilong was already a 62-year-old veteran. After the successful conquer of Taiwan, he could have avenged his father by massacring the Zhengs, but he refrained to do so. Yet, when Shulong heard of the discussions taking place in court of a plan to abandon Taiwan and pull back and guard only Penghu, he immediately submitted the famous Memorial on Taiwan to stay or to leave, with the intention of preventing Emperor Kangxi from making the wrong decision. Most of Kangxi's courtiers were advocating abandoning Taiwan, but the Grand Academician of the Hall for the Preservation of Harmony, Li Wei, supported Shilong's position. Ultimately, Kangxi decided to incorporate Taiwan into the territory of China and put it under the jurisdiction of Fujian province, with the establishment of a prefecture and 3 counties, ushering in the era of Qing rule. Section 2. The policy of rule in the early Qing dynasty. As a strategic post in the territorial waters of the Qing Empire, Qing rule and individual policies regarding Taiwan reflected the island's importance to coastal defense, whether in the system of military and administration or policies like single-route sea traffic, immigration, the boundaries to separate the Aborigines, and import control on iron. In May 1684, Vice Minister of Revenue Subai submitted a memo which recommended that Taiwan be divided into Taixia Circuit, Taiwan Prefecture, Taiwan County, Fengshan County, and Zhuluo County, under the jurisdiction of Fujian Province. Therefore, until 1875, the whole of Taiwan developed under the rule of a single prefecture. Over the course of these 191 years, the evolution of the local administrative regions and official titles are shown in Table 2-2-1. Table 2-2-1. Evolution of Taiwan Prefecture Administrative Regions, 1684 to 1875. Period, 1684 to 1727. Administrative Regions, 1 Prefecture, 3 Counties. Counties and official titles: Taixia Circuit, Prefect of Taiwan, Magistrate of Taiwan, County, Magistrate of Fengshan, County Magistrate of Zhuluo County. Period, 1727 to 1811. Administrative Regions, 1 Prefecture, 2 Sub-Prefectures, and 4 Counties. Counties and official titles: Taiwan Circuit, Prefect of Taiwan, Magistrate of Taiwan, County Assistant Prefect of Penghu, Sub-Prefecture Magistrate of Fengshan County, Magistrate of Chiayi County, Magistrate of Changhua County, Sub-Prefectural Magistrate of Danshui Police District. Period, 1812 to 1874. Administrative Regions, 1 Prefecture, 3 Sub-Prefectures, and 4 Counties. Counties and official titles: Circuit of Taiwan, Prefect of Taiwan, Magistrate of Taiwan County, Assistant Prefect of Penghu. Sub-Prefecture, Magistrate of Fengshan County, Magistrate of Chiayi County, Magistrate of Changhua County, Vice Prefect of Danshui Sub-Prefecture, Assistant Prefect of Kavalan Sub-Prefecture. End of Table 221. Some new official posts appeared for the first time in Taiwan. The first one is Circuit Intendant. In fact, before Taiwan Province came into being in 1885, Circuit Intendant was the highest-ranking civil official, associate 4th rank, in Taiwan. But the history of the circuit establishment is divided into 2 stages: the stage of the Taixia Circuit and that of the Taiwan Circuit. From 1684 to 1727, the administration was designated as the Taixia Circuit, with the office of the circuit located in the capital of Taiwan Prefecture, now Tainan. In addition to Taiwan, the circuit intendant was also put in charge of Xiamen. The stage of the Taiwan Circuit started after 1727, and the administrative power of the circuit intendant was limited only to Taiwan and Penghu, following the reform of the official system by the Qing court, while administration of Xiamen was turned to the Xingquanyang circuit. According to the system of the Qing dynasty, the power and responsibility of the circuit intendant was mainly supervising the performance of their duties by officials at lower ranks. However, in view of Taiwan's importance in coastal defense, the powers of its circuit intendant were enhanced. He was given, for example, the powers to dispatch confidential memos to the court, make preparations for war, supervising tax collection, imperial examinations, as well as the construction of Navy warships. The second is the prefect. Though a post that had appeared in the period of the Zheng regime of Ming, the Qing court had put forward clearer demands regarding its powers and duties. The prefect was the second highest-ranking official in Taiwan, second only to the circuit intendant at associate fourth rank. He was also stationed in Tainan. Interestingly, the Taiwan circuit after reform governed the same areas as did the Taiwan prefecture, and the only difference is the prefect primarily focused his attention on local education, collection of taxes and levies, and managing the local revenue and warehouses. However, like the Taiwan circuit intendant, the Taiwan prefect also had the power to adopt necessary measures in the context of local conditions, such as with regard to the control of the salt business and issuing payments and provisions to the soldiers of the green standards stationed in Taiwan. The third were vice prefect and assistant prefect. Also, these two posts appeared first in Taiwan, only in the Qing dynasty. The two acted as deputies to the prefect in their respective offices, responsible for the governance of the border areas. Before 1875, there were 3 vice prefects, plus the Danshui vice prefect, 5th rank, the Penghu assistant prefect, 6th rank, and Kavalan assistant prefect, 6th rank. The major routine administrative affairs of these vice prefects and assistant prefects were enforcement of law and collection of taxes and levies. Since the territories under their jurisdiction were mostly the frontier regions, administrative affairs inevitably caused much of their attention. For instance, the Danshui vice prefect and Kavalan assistant prefect gave their primary attention to collection of land tax and maintenance of social security, while the Penghu assistant prefect focused on coastal defense. The fourth was the county magistrate, whose job had always been designated as one that was most closely related to the people, 7th rank. The 4 counties under the Taiwan prefecture were no exception. The powers and responsibilities of the county magistrate mainly involved legal and fiscal administration, in addition to cultivating sound mores in the locals and pacifying the populace by punishing wrongdoers. If the 4 counties were arranged according to their importance, the sequence would be Taiwan County, Fengshan County, Zhuluo County, in 1787 changed to Chiayi County, and Changhua County. It is worth noting that Taiwan, separated from the mainland by a broad expanse of ocean, featured some officials rarely seen in mainland provinces. For example, from 1723 to 1781, an additional inspecting censor was deployed in Taiwan, making it possible for the emperor far away in his imperial palace of Beijing to directly supervise the officials in Taiwan. Again, a coastal defense vice prefect was posted in the capital of Taiwan Prefecture, who was made to work together with the Xiamen coastal defense vice prefect to control smuggling and illegal immigration. Finally, following the example of the vice prefect specially appointed to handle affairs related to the Yao ethnic minorities in Guangdong, a similar post was established, specially given the duty to handle affairs related to the native minorities in Taiwan. Regarding the system of garrison, the official Qing dynasty armed force was the Green Standards and the 8 Banners. As the latter had never been stationed in Taiwan, the Green Standards hence became the main force for local garrison. The recruit system was enforced for the Green Standards, but the soldiers of the Green Standards stationed in Taiwan were not recruited locally. They were transferred from among the Qing troops stationed in Fujian and were deployed in Taiwan for 3 years under the command of the regional commander of Taiwan. This special military system was named the Shift Military System. The Shift Military System was first imposed in 1686 for 3 reasons. One was that the Qing court had misgivings about enlistment in Taiwan, fearing infiltration by anti-Qing Ming supporters. The second was that Taiwan's population was too small in the early Qing time, making it impossible to recruit enough soldiers. And the third was that Green Standard soldiers were to be paid by the local government. But land in Taiwan was not yet well developed in early Qing, thus making it difficult to ask Taiwan to pay full rates for the soldiers' provisions. In 1875, the Qing court permitted in situ recruitment for the Green Standards in Taiwan, hence putting an end to the Shift Military System from 1684, when garrison of the Green Standards first appeared in Taiwan, until 1875, when local males could be enlisted in the Green Standards. The troop strength of the Green Standards in Taiwan is shown in Table 2-2.2 below. Table 2.2.2. The number of Taiwan Green Standard soldiers during the Qing dynasty. 1684, 10,000. 1735, 12,670. 1795, 13,000. 376. 1847, 14,657. 1869, 7,700. 1875, 7,700. End of table 2.2.2. In terms of the distribution of the Green Standards forces, Tainan, the capital of the prefecture, was the center of defense. Before troop numbers were cut to save money, up to 3,000 troops were usually stationed there. Next was Penghu, with more than 2,000 troops stationed. Troops of the Green Standards were stationed in a number of other locations, but not systematically, for example in today's Pingtung, Chiayi, Changhua, Hsinchu, Taipei, and Yilan. Another significant feature of the Green Standards in Taiwan was the large number of warships they had at their disposition. To this end, the Qing government set up the Taiwan shipyard, now in Tainan, responsible for shipbuilding, while the planning and management of the shipbuilding business was in charge by the Taiwan Circuit. The following table shows the numbers of warships in Taiwan Fujian naval forces. The warships built by Taiwan Shipyard accounted for up to 40% of the total, indicating the importance of Taiwan as a strategic point in maritime defense. Table 2-2-3. Table of number of naval warships in Taiwan and Fujian and local shipyards that built them. Taiwan Shipyard, 96 ships, 40% of total. Quanzhou Shipyard, 48, 20%. Zhangzhou Shipyard, Fengfendu, 20%. Fuzhou Shipyard, 46, 20%. Total ships, 242. End of table 2.2-3. In view of the importance of Taiwan in maritime defense, the policy of the Qing court on the route across the Taiwan Straits saw a change from that of the Dutch and Spaniard colonial rule, and the period of the Zheng regime, that Taiwanese vessels were free to sail off the island toward the enforcement of so-called specified routes. The practice was establishment of what were known as authorized exits in Fujian and Taiwan, which were permitted to manage sea traffic. Taiwanese vessels heading off the island had to start from an authorized exit in Taiwan and first arrive at an authorized exit in Fujian before transiting to any further destination. At the early stage after the authorized exits were established, only one port was chosen in Taiwan and Fujian, and the route between this pair was given the name ferry routes. In terms of the time when the authorized exits were opened, we can define 2 major phases. First, the period from 1684 to 1783, with 2 authorized exits. During this century-long phase, Fujian and Taiwan each had only 1 single authorized exit for the ferrying operation. This was a route starting from Xiamen of Quanzhou Prefecture, Fujian Province, via Penghu, heading for Luermen in Taiwan Prefecture. Interestingly, this had been the old route between Taiwan and Fujian in the 17th century. The historical figures who had used it included Zheng Chenggong, Zheng Jing, and Shi Lang. This also accounts for the deployment of the main Green Standards forces in Taiwan, deployed along the sea route between the island and the mainland. Second, the period of 8 authorized exits from 1784 to 1874. Over the course of these 90 years, 6 more routes were opened between Fujian and Taiwan, in addition to Xiamen and Luermen. And they were the one between Lukang, Changhua County in Taiwan, and Hanjiang, Shishi City, Fujian Province, in Quanzhou, opened in 1784, and the one to bring together Paliben, Danshui, in Taiwan, Bali Township, Taipei County, and Wuhumen, now Fuzhou, in Fuzhou Prefecture. The Qing government added the 4 new authorized exits in 1784 and 1788 in such a short space of time because it had come to note that the middle and northern parts of Taiwan were increasingly developed, for which the population that formerly concentrated in southern Taiwan had begun migrating north, thus making it necessary to create authorized exits in the center and north. But with regard to the 6 authorized exits established, regulations dictated that shipping traffic between Fujian and Taiwan should be strictly follow the ferrying principle. This meant that vessels from Xiamen could not go directly to Lukang or Paliben. This requirement was valid for other authorized exits. So on a map, we see only 3 parallel lines for crossing routes between Fujian and Taiwan. These stringent limitations were eased at the beginning of the 19th century. In 1810, the Qing court explicitly decreed that the 6 regular exits between Fujian and Taiwan might admit unlimited traffic, resulting in multiple routes across the Taiwan Straits. In 1826, the Qing court opened Wutiao, Chiayi County, now Taisi Township, Yunlin County, and Wuxi, Kavalan, now Tuqing Town, Yilan County, in Taiwan, as the 4th and 5th exits on the crossing. Hence, the formation of 3 authorized ports in Fujian Crossing to 5 authorized ports in Taiwan. In the single route period, any vessel crossing by any other route would be suspected of smuggling or carrying illegal immigrants. But this measure turned meaningless after the signing of the Treaty of Tientsin, Tianjin, in 1858, and the Convention of Peking in 1860, because the 2 unequal treaties stipulated that Taiwan must open Danshui, now Tamsui Town, Taipei County, Keelung, Anping, now Anping District, Tainan, and Takao, now Kaohsiung, as trading ports. As a result, foreign ships were exempt from the above-mentioned restriction and free to navigate any route they chose between trading ports on Taiwan and the mainland. The restriction on vessels sailing between Fujian and Taiwan were detrimental to competition in the shipping industry, and in 1874, Imperial Commissioner Shen Baozhen, who had come to negotiate with the Japanese military after the Mutanshe incident, came to a full understanding of the situation. Also known as the Japanese Expedition of 1874 to Taiwan, the Mutanshe incident occurred as a punitive expedition launched by the Japanese in retaliation for the killing of 54 Ryukyuan sailors by Paiwan Aborigines close to the southwestern tip of Taiwan in December 1871, when their ship capsized offshore. Shen Baozhen counseled the Qing court to abolish the restriction, and Qing court readily agreed, thus bringing to an end to a history of nearly centuries of ferrying policy between Fujian and Taiwan. The Qing imperial court had followed a similar pattern in tackling its immigration policy as that of its handling of the ferrying policy. After the pacification of Taiwan in 1683, Emperor Kangxi ordered an extension of the boundary. This allowed the people living along the southeast coast, who had formerly been forced to migrate inland due to the implementation of the boundary withdrawing policy, to return to their former homeland. Moreover, maritime trade had been restored, and merchant ships could again cross the seas to trade. However, a new problem that cropped up was the ocean that separated Taiwan from its center of jurisdiction in Fujian province, meaning the people in Fujian could not travel as immigrants or businessmen to Taiwan as easily as they could access Fujian's other prefectures. They had to negotiate the maritime defense provisions and apply for a permit to the government before departure with approval. In the early period, the conditions for such official permits were relatively loose, and the key here was that such permits did not ban the applicants from taking their family members with them. But this policy of leniency soon changed. In 1702, the Qing government decided to intensify control over Taiwan, and control must be enforced on the number of migrants to Taiwan. Thus began the provision that people must go to Taiwan singly. In the traditional patriarchal society, it was rare for women to travel far on their own. Therefore, the result of this provision of going singly to Taiwan would be tantamount to men going to Taiwan singly. This policy had generated a significant impact on the population growth and the gender advancing into the mountains. Over the next 3 decades, Han immigrants continued to settle in upland areas, in today's Taichung and Nantou. They pressed on towards the area of the Gaoshan natives, leading to incessant incidents of headhunting in these places. The increasing number of such events produced a serious impact on local law and order. To address the problem, in 1761, the Qing government mobilized people of tribes living on the plains to build a clearer boundary, known as Fanji, aboriginal boundary, which that time led from Keelung in the north to Fangliao in the south, now Fangliao Township, Pingtung County. In fact, the aboriginal boundary was also considered a defensive line, formed by sporadic buildings, square earthworks, accompanied by an adjacent section of trench tracking along the boundary line. Along the way, there were guard houses to be guarded by people of tribes living on the plains to prevent cross-border headhunting by Gaoshan residents. Passes were also established on some mountain paths at important sections of this boundary. Before the early 19th century, those guarding these passes were mainly people of the plains tribes, and more Han people gradually joined them since the mid-19th century. It is worth noting that the building of the aboriginal boundary also meant, in a sense, ethnic segregation, to keep immigrants out and to keep aboriginals in. East of the boundary was the area for the Gaoshan natives, and the area west of it was reserved for the Han Chinese and people of the Plains tribes. Han Chinese and Plains aborigines would be punished if caught trespassing, unless licensed. For example, they would be licensed to accompany military craftsmen into the mountains to cut down trees for timber for the construction of warships, or to be sent to find water sources for conservancy projects. Gaoshan natives who tried to cross the boundary to headhunt would be stopped by the guard bourses and passes along the boundary. Furthermore, the site of aboriginal boundary did not remain fixed for 2 reasons. Firstly, when it was first built in 1761, the territory under the jurisdiction of the Taiwan Prefecture covered only Danshui Sub-Prefecture, so the starting point of the northern boundary was Keelung. But after 1812, when Kavalan was made a sub-prefecture, the boundary had to be extended to northeastern Taiwan, encompassing the entire Lanyang Plain. Therefore, the starting point of the boundary in the 19th century moved to Suao, now Suao town of Yilan County. The boundary here was not formed by square earthworks with trenches, as along the western plains, but only fortresses at key points in the mountains. Therefore, the so-called aboriginal boundary in Kavalan was in reality only a line on the map. In the mountains, no real boundary line is to be found. Another reason was that after the boundary was established in 1761, despite repeated official decrees that strictly banned people from crossing the line to reclaim land, The reality was that the ban was never effectively implemented. Much land east of the line was still being privately cultivated. After the Lin Shuangwen incident, the Qing court made a comprehensive inventory of land along the aboriginal boundary and found many hidden fields, which were subsequently confiscated. These confiscations meant that the aboriginal boundary had been pushed back towards the deep mountains. In order to differentiate the old boundary from the new one on the map, the government marked the former by a red line and the new one by a blue line. The boundary on the map was then referred to as red and blue lines of dike mounds. Because the Qing court did not station officials or troops to the east of the boundary, by the end of the 19th century, the international powers had begun to challenge its claim to sovereignty on the basis that the Qing had not substantially ruled the entire island. Besides, when foreign ships were wrecked on the coastline to the east of the boundary, surviving crew members were often headhunted by the natives when they swam ashore. It was a wearisome task for the Qing government to deal with these international incidents. By 1874, again petitioned by Shen Baozhen, the Qing government agreed to abolish its aboriginal policy of more than 100 years. After the Qing extended the frontier in 1683, outward-bound merchant ships were allowed to make voyages to other parts of the world for trade. But the law was very strict about the items that could carry. One of the most strictly controlled items was weaponry in the form of cast iron. The iron ban in Taiwan can be traced back to 1706, when the provisions were that the Taiwan prefecture and its counties could file applications in the provincial capital to designate smoke households, and these households were divided into large, medium, and small ones. Every year on a quarterly basis, a license was granted to each household. Quarterly was quickly changed to biannual, allowing them to go to Zhangzhou and Longhai counties in Fujian to buy ironmongery. However, the limits were expressly stated. Large households could purchase 4 woks, medium ones 3, and small ones 2. Each household was again allowed to buy 2 or 3 plowshares and such farm implements. Every 10 large households could buy a large tripod for boiling sugar, while every 15 medium households and every 20 small households could buy a similar one. And one of such large tripods could be bought every 2 years. Judging by these provisions, it can be concluded that the Qing court was on high guard against the migrant population of Taiwan, fearing that they might convert such iron tools into weapons for use in rebellions against official rule once they had too many of them. Meticulous to the point of controlling even how many pots or tripods people were allowed to buy, the law would certainly produce sort of adverse impact on the efficiency of land reclamation by the immigrants. In 1749, the Fuzhou General Marbai said in a memo to the court that iron tools exported from Fujian to Taiwan each year mounted to 30,000 to 50,000 at the least, and 80,000 to 90,000 at the most. The average weight of the tools was about 3 to 4 kadi, or 20 to 30 kadi at the most. 1 ton equals 2,000 kadi. So it is likely that an average of 100,000 kadi of iron were shipped per year, or about 50 tons. Compared to Fujian's iron yield of about 9,000 tons per year in the early Qing, it is clear that the iron used in Taiwan was no more than a tiny fraction. As greater areas of land in Taiwan were brought under cultivation in the 19th century, the old policy of control on iron could no longer meet the growing demand, so new measures were introduced. In 1832, the Qing government made some adjustments to the regulations. The relevant licenses were granted thrice a year instead of twice as the case formerly. The annual cap of 9,000 woks was established, and all of which should be procured only in Longhai County, Zhangzhou Prefecture. After the Zhongbing incident of 1833, Qing officials filed more detailed reports on iron use in Taiwan. The Zhongbing incident refers to a peasant uprising led by Zhang Bing in 1832 against a corrupt local Qing County magistrate. The uprising once even spread to some other places in southern Taiwan and led to the establishment of a short-lived regime known as Tianyun, with Zhang Bing claiming himself the founding generalissimo. It eventually failed at the end of the year, and Zhang Bing, together with hundreds of others, was captured and killed. As a result, the former cap was listed to 27,000 woks annually, and they were to be bought in Zhangzhou. Besides, the number of ironsmiths in Taiwan was limited to 27, and they were all in the seats of prefectures, counties, and sub-prefectures, and to be guaranteed and inventoried by local officials. But with additional licenses issued by the Provincial Administration Commissioner, they could buy scrap iron and old pots in Taiwan locally, or recycle leftover iron from the Taiwan shipyard. Of course, with the thirst for iron among those active in reclaiming land, it was impossible to meet the needs of the people, with only 27 ironsmiths, so smuggling in iron tools was rife. Judging by the large amount of weapons the Qing troops seized after the defeat of the rioters each time there was a popular revolt, unofficial supplies of iron were flooding into Taiwan throughout the Qing dynasty. Realizing that iron ban conflicted with Taiwan's reality and could not be enforced, Shen Baozhen, imperial commissioner to Taiwan in 1874, then petitioned successfully for the abolition of the policy. From the perspective of early Qing policy, rule over Taiwan still hinged on defensive thinking. The Green Standards troops stationed in Taiwan could muster a strength of 10,000 at best, so we can assume that, at the beginning of its rule, the Qing court did not want to create pressure on the military administration by allowing too large a population to cross over to Taiwan. But those people from Fujian and Guangdong who migrated to Taiwan naturally expected to be able to lay claim to their shares of this new land. Not only did the official restrictions provoke resentment, they actually created active resistance. Thus, in Qing Taiwan, the relationship between the administration and the general public was always very strained, a factor which had an important impact on the background of social development during the whole dynasty. Section 3. Characteristics of the immigrant community. The Qing dynasty was a very important stage in the development process of the entire history of Taiwan, in that the society of the Gaoshan natives was transformed into a society of Han Chinese. In reality, prior to the 17th century, Han Chinese immigrants were few in number. But since Taiwan became a prefecture of Fujian in 1684, a fundamental change took place in the situation. According to the official records, during the 191-year period between 1684 and 1875, the number of Han Chinese in Taiwan had multiplied. See Table 231. Table 231, the number of Han Chinese in Taiwan in the Qing dynasty. No. Year number of Han Chinese in Taiwan, 1684, about 50 to 70,000. 1722, about 300,000. 1735, about 440,000. 1756, about 660,000. 1773, about 760,000. 1777, about 830,000. 1781, about 900,000. 1790, about 1.06 million. 1811, about 1.78 million. 1824, about 2.5 million. 1875, about 3 million. End of Table 2 to 3.1. From the statistics, we see that the stage when Han Chinese population increased fastest in Taiwan was not in the early Qing period, 1684 to 1790, but in the mid-Qing, 1790 to 1824. In the 106 years from 1684 to 1790, the population increased by only 1.01 million, but in the short span of only 34 years from 1790 to 1824, it swelled by 1.44 million. What were the reasons behind this rapid increase? The answer lies with the immigration policy. As previously mentioned, before 1788, the Qing court allowed only single Fujian and Guangdong people, males, to cross to Taiwan. But after 1788, this restriction was lifted and was replaced by applying and issuing permits to take spouses and children. The resulting boom in emigration to Taiwan from Fujian and Guangdong caused the population of Han people in Taiwan to grow to over 2 million people in a short period of time. In addition, the massive influx of immigrants turned out to be the major cause for population growth in Taiwan during the Qing dynasty, rather than not natural. The main driver behind migration from Fujian and Guangdong to Taiwan was the pursuit of better prospects. The prevailing state of mind was all profit-seeking and wealth accumulation. Thus, it can be said that a so-called utilitarian society formed in Taiwan very early in the Qing dynasty. This gave expression to a very important phenomenon, i.e., migrants who came to Taiwan were unlikely to stay permanently in one place and develop there. Whenever there were rumors that new land was available for settlement, and there were prospects of employment somewhere, they would flock to that location. Population mobility from south to north was another important feature, which was related to the ferrying policy. With only one pair of authorized port, one in Fujian and the other in Taiwan, from 1684 to 1783, those who did not come to Taiwan by way of smuggling had to come ashore at Luerman, resulting in steady growth in the population of southern Taiwan. The excess population began to move to central and northern Taiwan after 1735. In terms of the overall distribution, the population in southern Taiwan was still greater than that in the central and northern parts until 1895. Initially, it was the tribes in the plains that bore the greatest impact of the influx of Han immigrants. When the aboriginal boundary policy was lifted in the late 19th century, the Gaoshan Aborigines also felt the pressure. There was no annual official records of the population of the Plains Aborigines in the Qing dynasty, so the most complete data available today is a memo submitted to the imperial court in 1744, which noted there were at the time more than 170 community of familiar barbarians, with a total population of no less than 100,000 in Taiwan. If compared with fields 3 and 4 in Table 2 to 3.1, it can be seen that at that point, the Han Chinese population may already be estimated at 4 or 5 times that of the total population of the Plains Aborigines. By the 18th century, the Han Chinese, through the power of their larger population, were beginning to transform Taiwan's traditional social structure, previously dominated by the Gaoshan natives. The Plains Aborigines were in a dire situation in face of such transformation. Most burdensome was the unlimited corvée asked by the government of them. For example, in the implementation of the Aborigine boundary policy, all the mounds and ditches along the boundary line were built or dug by forced labor on the part of the Plains Aborigines. In addition, from time to time, the officials mobilized males in the Plains Aboriginal tribes to take watch by turns in guardhouses without any compensation, to carry out such menial work of driving carts and fetching and carrying during the changes of the garrison, and to serve as entourage and servants to touring officials. It is therefore quite understandable that since the very start of the Qing dynasty, the relationship between the Han and the natives in Taiwan had been tense. Even people of the tribes in the plains had rose against intolerable oppression. In 1732, Gaoshan Aborigines launched the largest uprising in the history of central Taiwan, and its repercussions spread to areas of today's Miaoli, Taichung, and Changhua. This unrest was divided into 2 stages. The first lasted from January till May of the year. The direct cause of the even was over heavy corvée labor imported by the Danshui Pacification District on the people of Tachiasi, Tachia Town, Taichung County. When this wave of unrest had almost been suppressed, The local soldiers killed some native laborers who had already given themselves in to how well they had performed their duty. This only made people of the hard-oppressed communities even more resentful, thus giving rise to an even greater round of unrest from June to December, led by Salach, Shalu Town, Taichung County, Gomach, Qingshui Town, Taichung County, and Tatuturo, Dadu Township, Taichung County. The government mobilized all Green Standards troops to fight them, but the war was a hard one at the beginning, for the thick jungles and winding narrow trails, which made their offensive unsuccessful. Not until the Lahodobu, another Plains Aboriginal community from the central uplands, offered their services, were they able to reverse the situation. This case demonstrated an important fact. Even faced with a powerful ruler, the Gaussian natives remained strong, and also, their adaptability was key to the viability of this ethnic group. The familiar barbarians, who revolted against the imperial court in the central part of the island, were all Plains Aborigines living along the coastline of Taichung. They chose to take up arms against their rulers, but their venture was doomed to failure. The Aboriginal Lahodobu chose to cooperate with the Qing government in putting down the revolt. For this, they were well rewarded by the court, which granted to them much of the land in today's Taichung County and city. The case of the Lahodobu also encouraged the Qing court to think differently about the possibility of putting its trust in the forces of the Gaoshan Aborigines to stabilize its rule over Taiwan. The Qing court's concern was justified because the entire force of the Green Standards in Taiwan was at best 10,000-odd troops. But the number of Han Chinese in Taiwan had kept increasing, already stretching thin the forces of the Green Standards to defend and monitor them. So at the end of the 18th century, when the population of Han Chinese in Taiwan reached 1 million, the Taiwan Green Standards were made to face a local population 100 times larger than its own force, and new approaches were contemplated to cooperate with the native minorities. After the settlement of the Lin Shuangwen incident in 1788, the Qing court modeled after the example of local ethnic garrison posts in Sichuan to form in Taiwan aboriginal garrison posts, with a total strength of 4,000 soldiers, which were grouped into 4 major garrison posts and 8 minor ones. Each large post was garrisoned by 400 men, and a minor one by 300. The command at the aboriginal garrison posts was granted to the Taiwan regional commander, while the payrolls and the soldiers' pay were handled by the South and North Route vice prefects in charge of minority affairs. The birth of aboriginal garrison posts turned over a new leaf in Taiwan's history, as it was the first time that whole armies were made up of Gaoshan natives, from the officers to soldiers. It was also a very successful maneuvering on the part of the Qing court to stabilize its rule in Taiwan by incorporating the forces of Gaoshan Aborigines. While migrating to Taiwan, the Han immigrants displayed the same migratory tendency throughout the island. Yet, in their choice of settlements, they still gave more consideration to such social factors as affection among fellow villagers and common dialects. The domiciles of origin for most migrants were in the 2 provinces of Fujian and Guangdong, but it was quite complicated to divide them into local subgroups. For example, the people in Fujian could generally be divided into 6 subgroups: Fuzhou people, Funing Prefecture and Fuzhou Prefecture; people of northern Fujian, Jianing Prefecture, Yanping Prefecture, Shaowu Prefecture, and Yongchun Sub-Prefecture; the Hakas, Tingzhou Prefecture; people of Longyan, Longyan Sub-Prefecture; people of Xinhua, Xinhua Prefecture; and people of southern Fujian, Zhangzhou Prefecture, and Quanzhou Prefecture. For the immigrants to Taiwan, however, those from southern Fujian ranked first in number, mainly because Xiamen, the authorized port for ferrying to and from Taiwan, and under the jurisdiction of Quanzhou Prefecture, was close to southern Fujian. With regard to Guangdong, the immigrants to Taiwan came mainly from its eastern prefectures, such as Hakkas from Jiaying Prefecture, covering Jiaoling, Pingyuan, Wuhua, and Xingning counties; Haifeng and Lufeng counties in Huizhou Prefecture and Raoping, and Dabu counties in Chaozhou Prefecture, as well as Han people from Chaoyang and Shantou of Chaozhou Prefecture. Having migrated and lived in Taiwan for a century and more, these immigrants had gradually formed the habit of living in groups by same domiciles of origin. The Hakkas, for example, scattered widely from north to south in Taiwan, but those from Tingzhou Prefecture in Fujian most lived in compact communities in the northern coastal areas, those from Jiaying Prefecture in Guangdong, on the hilly lands of Taoyuan and Miaoli, those from Haifeng and Lufeng counties of Guangdong, on the hilly lands in Hsinchu, those from Raoping and Dapu in Guangdong, on the hilly lands of Taichung, those from Zhangzhou in Fujian, on hilly lands of Changhua and Yunlin, known as Zhangzhou Hakkas, and those from the Jiaying Prefecture of Guangdong, on the hilly lands of Kaohsiung and Pingtung. In southern Taiwan, immigrants from southern Fujian generally mixed with other people, but in the central and northern regions, they more apparently lived in compact communities in accordance with their ancestral domiciles. For example, the immigrants from Zhangzhou scattered in present-day Yilan County, the present-day Banqiao, Tucheng, Chengho, Yonghe, and Shilin districts of New Taipei, Daxi Town in Taoyuan County, Taichung, and on the inland plains of Changhua County. If living in the Taipei Basin, the immigrants from Quanzhou were then further divided into sub-communities according to the counties from where they came from. For example, immigrants from the three counties of Nan'an, Hui'an, and Jinjiang would mostly live in the Wanhua district of Taipei. Those from Tong'an County in Datong district of Taipei, and those from Anxi County in Wenshan district of Taipei, as well as Shenkeng and Shiding townships of Taipei County. Broadly speaking, however, outside of Taipei, people from Quanzhou were more or less gathered in the coastal zone. A tentative view held by 20th century historians in Taiwan on the distribution of the ancestral homes of the early immigrants was that there was a so-called three-tier distribution. People from Quanzhou preferred to live on the coast, those from Zhangzhou liked to live in the plains, and the Hakkas were inclined to live in the upland areas. The above information indicates that there was some truth in this analysis. It is worth noting, however, that such distribution only applied strictly in central Taiwan, today's Taichung City and County and Changhua County, while in other parts of the country, there were a number of exceptions to the rule. Tingzhou guests living in the low-lying region on the north coast, Zhangzhou people living in Daxi of Taoyuan, an upland area rather than a plain, Quanzhou people in Taipei living on inland plains and other non-coastal areas. Han people came to Taiwan bringing with them their local customs. Of these, the most far-reaching impact on the social development of Taiwan were religious beliefs. The hardships suffered by the Fujian and Guangdong immigrants went far beyond the imagination of modern man. Shipwrecks were frequent in the Taiwan Straits, and life on the island was punctuated by both natural and man-made disasters, as well as frequent outbreaks of disease. A saying that circulated at the time went that, of 10 migrants to Taiwan, 3 would die on the way, 1 would return home, and only 6 would be able to arrive and settle down successfully. In the face of such hardship, the settlers needed some spiritual comfort, and since the Qing dynasty, the Taiwanese have had a strong belief in deities and ghosts. For example, Matsu and Wangye command widespread belief in Taiwan. The former is the patron saint of sailing. The latter is the god of plague, both of which reflect the desire of immigrants for a safe journey and future life. The migrants also brought with them their own local beliefs, which can be traced along with the immigrant populations in accordance with the distribution of their ancestral homes. For example, people from the three counties of Nan'an, Hui'an, and Jinjiang in Quanzhou believed in Avalokiteshvara, God of mercy, so anywhere they lived in a community would have a majestic Longshan temple, temple of goddess of mercy. Besides, the people from Tong'an in Quanzhou worshipped Emperor Paosheng, god of medicine. People from Anxi believed in the Qingshui patriarch, god of safety, or the two loyal generals of in the Tang dynasty, Zhang Xun and Shu Yuan, known as Wanggong. People from Zhangzhou worshipped the sacred prince and developer of Zhangzhou, Chen Yuanguang, a patron saint. People from Chaozhou in Guangdong believed in the King of Three Mountains, a mountain god, and Hakkas from Guangdong believed in the three great emperors, gods of heaven, earth, and water. Naturally, there were also indigenous worships, the most important of which were the worship of Zhengchenggong and worship of ferocious ghosts. The importance of Zhengchenggong in the history of Taiwan was established as early as in the 17th century, and after his death, he was worshipped as the sage king to open Taiwan. The worship of ferocious ghosts derived from the immigrants' fears of the spirits of those who died away from home, and they enshrined and made sacrifices to them. One of the typical examples is the worship of spirits of upright folks. The so-called upright folks referred, in fact, those were killed in action while fighting on behalf of the official authority in civil commotions and gang fights. At the time, the emperor would usually reward their loyalty and bravery by granting imperial titles. While being places that provided spiritual consolation, the temples established in the Qing dynasty also played another important function, i.e., serving as a platform to regulate human relations. An immigrant society under the influence of specific immigration policies, Taiwan could in no way get the benefit of deep-seated blood lineages. So, judging by the clan pedigrees left over from the Qing dynasty, the so-called large clans appeared pretty late. Probably it was not until after the mid-19th century that large clans which could match their counterparts in the Chinese inland began to appear. And this resulted in phenomenon quite different from that of the mainland, i.e., the establishment of ancestral halls were not common. As a result, temples replaced the ancestral halls to hold up the clan members, playing the best role in regulating the human relations in a community. Such a feature has been named by academics the religious sphere, and it is believed that a direct relationship exists between the development of the settlements and the religious sphere. In terms of the relations between the former domiciles of the immigrants and Taiwan, the introduction of land reclamation and farming methods had played an important role. Although Taiwan is small in size, its patterns of land reclamation and farming were rather complicated. In 1684, when the Qing court imposed its rule in Taiwan, all official land and garrison land obtained since the Zheng family rule were confiscated and renamed official estates. However, the tenants farming the land were not expelled by the Qing court, but had their status changed into official tenants. Revenues from these official estates were all turned into a major source of government spending. As most of the official and garrison lands were located in the present-day Chiayi, Tainan, Kaohsiung, and Pingtung, the overwhelming part of the official estates was also found there. In addition to official estates of the civilian yamen, governments, the military yamen also had a similar right to land. In 1730, the officers of the Green Standards troops in Taiwan began to purchase farmland and sugar workshops with public funds, and they called such properties grace estates, and the revenues they produced were a source of bounties and pensions for the soldiers. In the central and northern regions, the pattern of land management was the household ownership the Fujian and Guangdong immigrants brought in from Fujian and Guangdong, which differed from the predominant pattern in the south. Also known as the ownership of proprietor or ownership of reclamation household, the law ruled that Han households should first make an official application for a reclamation permit before they were able to settle on land and cultivate it. But in the early Qing dynasty, there was plenty of land to be opened up in Taiwan. Almost all Han households often applied for territories that went far beyond their ability to work, with the objective of creating large estates. These households then had to sublet the land to tenants, who helped them do the actual reclamation. However, against the background of serious shortage of labor in the early Qing Taiwan, these households could not but appeal to tenants by signing with the latter indentures of emphyteusis, perpetual tenancy, so as to make them more enthusiastic in working the land. The birth of emphyteusis, however, left the Han proprietors with only the ownership of the land, while the land use right was transferred to the tenants. The tenants would then further divide the land according to their own individual circumstances, and lease it on to so-called current tillage tenants, bringing into place a two-tier land ownership referred to as two owners for one plot. Back in Fujian and Guangdong, this pattern of land management had been known as land bone, ownership, and land skin, land use right. Although it led to an extremely unfair distribution of land ownership, it allowed the rapid recruitment of labor and therefore a rapid development of land. After its implementation in Taiwan, the current tillage tenants paid rent to the tenants, known as the small renters, who in turn paid rent to the Han proprietors, known as the large renters, and finally the Han proprietors paid to the local authorities the land tax. It is worth noting that the proprietors of land were not exclusively Han Chinese. The landowners of the Plains Aborigines could also be Aboriginal proprietors, by leasing their land to the Han immigrants. The people of Lahodabu, mentioned above, had learned of this form of land management and got quickly acquainted to the rules of commodity economy. Furthermore, a proprietor did not always refer to a single family. It sometimes means a group of people. As land reclamation required upfront investment, aspirants often organized a cooperative to raise sufficient money for a project. This partnership could share out the risk of reclamation equally among all members, and if successful, divide any profits in accordance with the shares. The famous land proprietors or land reclamation cooperatives appeared in the Qing dynasty, included, for example, the Chen Laijiang Co-op in Taipei, the Hsinchu proprietor Wang Shijie, the Zhang Zhenwan Co-op in Taichung, and the Shi Changling Co-op in Changhua. All of them were pioneers of land reclamation in the early Qing. There were also two forms of land management that were creations in and were unique to Taiwan. These were the sum head system of the late 18th century and the reclamation head system of the mid-19th century. The sum head system first appeared in Kavalan, Yilan County, and extended to the areas of present-day Puli, in Nantou, as well as the Hualien and Taitung counties. The description above indicates the extensive development that took place in Taiwanese society in the early and mid-Qing dynasty, the nature of which can be verified by the results of the imperial examinations. Qing Dynasty Taiwan produced in total 29 metropolitan graduates and 251 provincial graduates. The first metropolitan graduate appeared in 1694, but he was an immigrant. If you consider the whole process of exams from the county prefecture level to the palace level as the measure of generating successful local candidates, then this did not happen until the 19th century. In 1823, the Deng Yongxi, Taiwan's first candidate of the highest imperial examinations, succeeded, thus becoming a model to be emulated by the literati on the island. In the martial arts examinations, the candidates from Taiwan performed better, perhaps due to their local tradition of warrior ethos. Throughout the entire Qing dynasty, a total of 10 candidates of martial arts succeeded in the highest imperial examinations, one of them winning the third place, and 297 succeeded in the imperial examinations at the prefectural level. What is interesting is that all those who turned out successful in both the civil and martial art examinations did only a passable job in their official careers. Of all the Taiwanese who took up official careers in the Qing dynasty, only 2 rose to the second rank or higher, and they were Wang Delu and Lin Wenxia. Both of them enlisted first in military service and rose gradually to become magnificos for their excellent military exploits. Wang Delu rose step by step to the post of Zhejiang Provincial Military Commander for the military exploits he had performed in hunting down of the Fujian pirate Kai Qian and the Guangdong pirate Zhu Fen off the southeast coast in the early 19th century. On the part of Lin Wenxia, he was promoted to the post of Fujian Provincial Military Commander of the Army for his performance in suppressing the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. One final key feature of Taiwan society during the Qing dynasty was the frequency of social unrest. Sayings were coined such as, "A small revolt every 3 years, a major one every 5 years, and never a decade without a revolt." Such social unrest tended to take the form of localized revolts against the government, but careful research into the origins of these 2 sayings reveals that they both date from after the mid-19th century. During that period, frequent revolts and peasant uprisings were not unique to Taiwan only. They were common across the whole of the mainland as well. This was an indicator of the general recession affecting late Qing China. Thus, care must be taken in using these incidents as a means of analyzing the situation in Taiwan in the 17th and 18th centuries. The social unrest in Taiwan during the Qing dynasty can be divided into 2 categories: popular revolts and gang fights. By the late 1800s, there had been 5 major incidents in Taiwan. See Table 232. Table 232. Top 5 popular revolts in Qing dynasty Taiwan. The Zhu Yigui incident, south of Taipei, north of Pingtung today, April 7th to July 30th, 1721. 116 days. At least 20,000 people involved. 21,700 soldiers, 500 familiar barbarians, 12,500 folks, about 34,700 in total, deployed. The Lin Shuangwen incident, south of Taipei, north of Pingtung today, January 10th, 1787 to March 11th, 1788. 426 days. At least 200,000 involved, including those under duress. 100,000 soldiers, 61,500 upright folks and aborigines, about 161,500 in total deployed. The Kai Qian harassing Taiwan incidents, Chiayi, Tainan today, May to June, 1804, January 21st to April, 1806, 100 days, 2,500 involved. The Zhangbing incident, Yunlin, Chiayi, Tainan today, November 16th, 1832 to January 1833. About 48 days. Over 10,000 involved. 16,500 soldiers, 500 upright folks, 17,000 in total deployed. The Dai Kaochen incident, Miaoli, Taichung, Nantu, Changhua, Yunlin, Chiayi, Tainan today, April 13th, 1862 to January 18th, 1865. 1,012 days. 200,000 involved, including those under duress. 21,916 soldiers, 4,000 garrison aborigines, at least 1,000 upright folks, about 26,916 in total deployed. End of Table 232. Each of the 5 incidents had its own individual characteristics. Zhu Yigui was a native of Changtai County, Zhangzhou Prefecture, and an immigrant making his living raising ducks in Luohanmen of Fengshan County, Naimen Township of Kaohsiung County. He rebelled against Taiwan, Prefect Wang Zhen's brutal oppression and exploitation, proclaiming himself King of Zhongxing. His forces made inroads across almost the whole island, capturing the whole of western Taiwan, except Danshui in Taipei County. Unfortunately for Zhu, Infighting took place between the southern Fujian immigrants and immigrant Hakkas within his forces, and it took the Qing troops to put down the revolt in a little bit more than month's time as the so-called upright folks, claiming to have coming from Liutui, came to their help. Lin Shuangwen was a native of Pinghe County, Zhangzhou Prefecture, who had migrated to Daliyi Changhua County, Tali City, Taichung County, to become a landowner. He also had a more significant identity, a leader of the Heaven and Earth Society in Taiwan. When the government sent troops everywhere to arrest the society's activists, Lin Shuangwen resisted them with the support of his congregation. He proclaimed himself Great Leader of Shuntian. The forces under his leadership seemingly turned invincible and inflicted heavy losses on the Qing government troops, compelling the Qing imperial court to redeploy troops from 10 mainland provinces, namely Fujian, Guangdong, Guangxi, Jiangxi, Zhejiang, Jiangsu, Hunan, Hubei, Sichuan, and Guizhou. With the help from the upright folks in Liutui, Hsinchu, and Taipei, Lin Shuangwen's uprising was eventually put down. Emperor Qianlong took great pride in the successful settlement of the Lin Shuangwen incident, listing it as one of his 10 major military exploits. The major character in the third case was Kai Qian, who was a native of Tong'an, Quanzhou. In 1803, he paid huge bribes to private shipyards in Fujian to build large ships with which he engaged in piracy on the Taiwan Straits between Fujian and Taiwan. However, he was not satisfied with plundering on the sea only. He also had his eye on Tainan, an isolated but prosperous location, and the capital of the Taiwan Prefecture. He made 2 assaults which badly weakened the harbor defenses of Taiwan Prefecture. From 1805 to 1806, proclaiming himself King of Zhenhai, he also occupied Chaozai Wei, Yongkang, Tainan County, planning to attack Tainan in collusion with local brigands. But the Qing dispatched a large naval force to engage him, and only then was he expelled from Taiwan. Kai Qian was surrounded by the Qing Navy off the coast in Wenzhou, Zhejiang, in 1809. Unable to break through the encirclement, he blew up his own ship and perished at sea. Zhang Bing was a native of Nanjing County in Jiangzhou and a farming immigrant in Dianzaiku, Chiayi County, Baihei Township, Tainan County. In terms of the area affected and the duration, this was in fact the smallest of the all 5 major incidents. It was triggered off when Zhang became angry with officials who had taken side with immigrants from Guangdong in a local gang fight. Zhang rebelled in the name of the founding generalissimo, but the Qing troops quickly put down the uprising he led by simply mobilizing the Fujian Green Standards. Dai Chaochun was a native of Longxi County, Zhangzhou, an immigrant landlord in Xizhangli of Changhua County, Beitun District of Taichung. It is worth noting that Dai too was the leader of the Taiwan Heaven and Earth Society and acted in the name of the militia. After being unmasked, he proclaimed himself Eastern King and took arms against the Qing forces. As this was concurrent with the Taiping uprising in the mainland, the Qing court had no extra troops to be dispatched, putting down the insurrection. As a result, it lasted 3 years and became the uprising with the longest duration in Taiwan during the Qing dynasty. Eventually, the Qing court ordered Taiwanese soldiers previously transferred to Zhejiang and Fujian back to the island, led by Fujian Army Commander Lin Wencha. With the help of the upright folks from Lugang of Changhua, Hsinchu, and Dongxi of Taichung, Lin managed to squelch the uprising. Popular revolts were indeed a big headache for the Qing court to rule Taiwan, particularly those cases involving the Heaven and Earth Society. So, the Qing court remained highly vigilant against the threat brought about the participation of the society's members in any social unrest. The term minbian, popular revolt, was not the one used in Qing official documents. Instead, they described the same thing as hoisting the flag, meaning hoisting a flag for rebellion. The colors of the flags were not the same, sometimes red and sometimes black, while the color of the flags representing the official forces was mostly white. In addition to different colors, both sides had characters written on their flags to distinguish friend from foe. Within the territory of the Qing Empire, the provinces most affected by armed gang fights were Fujian and Guangdong. With immigrants from these two provinces arriving at Taiwan, they brought with them this tradition of violence. However, the armed gang fights in Fujian and Guangdong were mostly family feuds. As mentioned above, prior to the mid-19th century, clans had not yet well developed in Taiwan. So the feuds on the island took a different form from those on the mainland where they had originated. They tended to be fought based on domiciles of origin. They were therefore termed classification gang fights, as the allegiance of the combatants could be classified according to their ancestral places of origin. The earliest record of such a conflict dates to 1721. The Zhu Yigui incident was at its height, and when the upright folks from Lutuai counterattacked, they killed all the migrants from Fujian in Kaohsiung and Pingtung, without concerning themselves as to whether their victims had been involved in the revolt or not. This indiscriminate slaughter provoked a response from Fujian settlements, resulting in armed fights between migrants from Fujian and Guangdong for the first time. It is noteworthy that this earliest fight was not yet termed a classification gang fight, although the combatants fought each other based on their ancestral allegiance. After this, fights of this sort were a regular occurrence in various parts of Taiwan as a result of competition for water and arable land. But they were not yet serious enough to cross county borders. In 1782, a prairie fire was triggered off by a gang fight in Changhua County that spread to Chiayi County. In 1784, local officials finally managed to bring an end to the conflict, and they noted that allegiance in such gang fights on Taiwan was often based on ancestral domiciles, which was unusual. Therefore, in the memo presented to the court, they invented the term classification gang fight. There were in total 5 cross-county gang fights in Taiwan in the 18th and 19th centuries, and the destruction they caused was no less serious than that due to popular revolts. See Table 233. Table 233. 5 largest armed gang fights in Qing Dynasty Taiwan. The Jiangzhou Quanzhou gang fight. Today's Changhua Yunlin Chiayi, October 5, 1782 to February 9, 1783. 128 days, 489 arrested, 1,140 soldiers deployed. Jiangzhou Quanzhou gang fight number 2. Today's Taipei, Taoyuan, Hsinchu, Miaoli, Taichung, Changhua, Yunlin, Chiayi, Tainan. May 22, 1809 to February 15, 1810. 270 days, 380 people involved on record. 6,400 soldiers, 700 garrison aborigines, totaling 7,100 people deployed. The Fujian Guangdong gang fight. Today's Yilan, Taipei, Taoyuan, Hsinchu, Miaoli, Taichung, Changhua, Yunlin, Chiayi, Tainan. May to December 25, 1826, about 208 days. Thousands on record involved, 6,200 soldiers deployed. Fujian Guangdong gang fight number 2. Today's Taipei, Taoyuan, Hsinchu, Miaoli, Taichung, February to April 13, 1833, about 44 days. Jiangzhou Quanzhou gang fight number 3. Today's Taichung, Changhua, Yunlin, Chiayi. September 7, 1845 to January 24, 1846. 140 days. 238 involved on record. 1,200 soldiers deployed. End of Table 233. From the above table, we see that such fights were commonplace in locations like Changhua, Yunlin, and Chiayi. Whenever a fight, be it in the north or the south, broke out, its repercussions would easily spread to them, making these places suffering the spreading prairie fires. But why did the classification gang fights tend to spread across county borders? It was mainly because there was always a group of homeless vagrants who took a particular enjoyment in spreading rumors and looting the burning house, thus adding fuel to the flames and making the situation get out of control. The largest of these fights was number 3 in the table, which took place in 1826. It was sparked off in what is now Yilan, and the fighting spread all the way to Tainan. The death toll was shocking. Classification gang fights caused such huge loss of life and property that the only option was to let all those who had come from the same ancestral home settle together. Then when trouble arose, they could at least try to protect and take care of each other. This practice, however, reinforced the established distribution pattern of immigrants, grouping together in accordance with their ancestral homes, a result no one expected. Cross-county classification gang fights disappeared in the late 19th century. They were replaced by fights between groups based on their occupation, their last name, or even subgroups from the same place of origin. This indicates that the descendants of the early immigrants did not have as strong an allegiance to their ancestral homes as their predecessors. The root cause of the gang fights was no longer a vague sense of allegiance to their ancestral domiciles, but had become some other factor related to people's vital interests that would incite them to join in. This development shows that some changes had taken place in the 19th century Taiwanese society, and such changes had their origins in the invasion of China by the various international powers. End of Chapter 2.